It is just a huge honor today to be podcast interviewing Tim Spooner, PT, FAFS, CEO of Spooner Physical Therapy. Thanks for joining me.
Nice to be here.
And the lovely lady to his right, who should have sat in the middle to make both of us look even better, is LaRissa Shafts, PT for Physical Therapy, DPT. She's actually a doctor of physical therapy. FAFS, what does that stand for?
Fellowship of Applied Functional Science. And
then CLT-U
is a certified lymphedema therapist for the upper extremity.
My God, you're that's just amazing. LaRissa has 4 years of clinical experience with treating individuals with breast cancer. She graduated from the same university I did, Creighton University in Omaha, Nebraska, with a doctorate in physical therapy in 2010. Upon her graduation, LaRissa possessed a passion to make a difference in people's lives, being on the cutting edge of cancer and orthopedic rehabilitation and acting as an advocate for her patients. She possesses an in-depth knowledge of and empathy for the emotional and psychological stresses that can accompany the diagnosis of breast cancer. Her passion is to revolutionize the way that women recover from mastectomies, lumpectomies, and diagnosis of breast cancer. But you know, men get breast cancer too.
Yes, they do. We see several men within our facility.
They're like 1% of the cases. And it's often misdiagnosed because people aren't thinking
right.
That. I have a very good dentist friend. Sorry to interrupt your
That's right.
video. I have a very, very close dentist friend who was feeling really bad and ill and went to his doctor. They couldn't do nothing. Then he got so ill, he went to the St. Joe Hospital, and pretty soon his wife realized he's going to die. So she put him in her car and drove him to the bigger hospital in Kansas City, and they said, we have no idea, and then he was going to die. So she went balls to the walls, hired an ambulance private airplane, flew him to Mayo Clinic in Rochester, New York, went in the emergency room with him, and the Mayo Clinic doctor said, well, obviously, 2 hospitals can't find anything wrong, so we're not even going to think about anything that anybody would think about in those 2 hospitals. Right. So we're going to start going through all the most likely overlooked things that a 60-year-old fat male bald dentist in St. Joe, Missouri would have, and they discovered it right out of the gate. Guess what it was?
Breast cancer.
A yeast infection.
Oh.
He had a yeast infection, and his wife, Barbara, had a yeast infection like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So they both had a yeast infection, but being a girl, she was on top of it and treated it, and a fungus almost killed Doc.
Oh my gosh.
And she pursues this through innovative education, evidence-based rehabilitation, advanced manual therapy techniques, and return to fitness programs that promote 3-dimensional training. LaRissa is a fellow of applied functional science from the Gary Gray Institute and is trained in assessing the body 3-dimensionally to achieve lasting results for her patients. While she is trying to change the world one breast at a time, she is also focused on her other passions, running, hiking, and spending time with her family and husband, Benjamin. And Tim Spooner here, right here to my left, is the owner and CEO of Spooner Physical Therapy, an 18-location outpatient private practice in the Phoenix metropolitan area. Tim opened Spooner Physical Therapy in 1990 with the philosophy that every patient should be empowered with the knowledge and ability to function at their highest level and promote healing. Over time, health and motion has become the Spooner tagline. Tim has deeply embedded the idea of clinical and conceptual motion into the vision and the culture of the organization, embracing motion as being healthy in all aspects. Tim maintains a Bachelor of Science degree in physical therapy from the University of North Dakota. What city was that in? Fargo?
Grand Forks.
Grand Forks. My grandma was born in Fargo. And along with a completed fellowship of Applied Functional Science, AFS, through the Gray Institute. He has been using AFS strategies for nearly 30 years to treat his patients, as well as a coach, mentor, and train the therapists within his company. My God, you and I have both practiced for 30 years, but I have 1 location. You must be a business genius to have 18 locations. I mean, that's...
Either that or you're way more successful in your one than I was in mine.
Well, you definitely learned how to delegate.
Correct.
And build a winning team.
I'm blessed to work with like-minded people like LaRissa that can not only see the vision but also take it forward and take care of our communities.
Well, this is going to sound like a very dumb question, but this is Ahwatukee Uncensored. What is physical therapy? Because some people, when they injure one, some do physical therapy, some do massage therapy, Some go to chiropractors to get, there's
Manipulated.
Yeah. So what is physical therapy and how is it different? And is it mostly repairing injuries? I mean, I assume everybody that got physical therapy fell down the stairs?
Physical therapists are your musculoskeletal expert in the medical community. So if your car breaks down, you would take it to a
mechanic.
If your body breaks down, you would go to a
emergency room
physical therapist.
Okay.
Plain and simple. So
I got that question wrong.
Yeah, you did.
I'm sorry.
Thank you for getting that on film.
It was spoon-fed to me. It was spoon-fed to me, and I miss it. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed.
So we are trained in all things movement. Your bones, your ligaments, your tendons, and how the body does any type of function in the to achieve its daily goals. So whether that's gardening or whether that's playing tennis, or in the cases of specializations like LaRissa has, treating people after cancer, very significant things of getting them back to doing what they want to do.
So what would be like the top 10 reasons that people would seek physical therapy?
Musculoskeletal injuries, by a whole, are the number one leader of payment in the medical system. So,
and the number one leader in what?
How much things cost, like a health plan.
So you're saying number one would be injury? Is that what you just said?
Number one in injury and cost. Okay. So
and what is that injury usually? A car wreck?
No, it could be anything. It could be a muscle strain.
Aches and pains.
It could be, someone needs a total joint. It could be a motor vehicle accident. It could be an injury at work. It could be a dentist or some of our favorite clients, because there's no way that you can treat in that small little space with your head and body tilted for 30 years and not have problems associated with it.
My neck is completely trashed. I'm always doing this.
Yep.
I mean, I've leaned a 10-pound bowling ball over cockeyed for 30
For
years.
30.
I've done this.
Yeah.
And my neck, after about 15 years, was bothering me. Now it's just trashed.
And so we look at all those things, and if in Arizona we're allowed to treat right off the street, so we're allowed to treat direct access. So if I knew you when you're treating, this is very common for us to keep dentists operating at their highest function, to have them come in for treatments, tune-ups, if you will, to keep their body moving well. So I would probably do some things to make your neck feel better. There's probably things that we could do throughout the rest of your body, like your thoracic spine that head sits on, to make sure that it's not causing problems as well.
I'm trying to get a total head transplant, but I can't talk Brad Pitt into it.
And that's the head you were going to go for?
Yeah. Yeah, were you thinking more Leonardo DiCaprio?
I could see with Brad, maybe a bank account transplant. That would be a good one, but I don't know about a head transplant.
So how long is an average appointment?
Average appointment in our clinic is an hour to hour and 15 minutes.
Wow, that's a very thorough, long appointment.
It is. I mean, in therapists, because we do spend so much time with the patient, and a lot of times it's on a multiple times per week basis. So we really get to know our clients, and not only they're not neck injuries to us. They are people that are involved in their communities, and that neck injury may be preventing them from doing something they truly love. And so you're really taking care of not only their body, but also their mind and their spirit as well.
So how did you get interested in breast cancer? Because that's a big part of your... What percent of your practice is breast surgery survivors?
Prior to becoming a director, it was like 75%. And then throughout the years, we've brought on other therapists who are now treating that specialty as well. But our program at Spooner Physical Therapy started probably 9 years ago with a therapist that moved to Minnesota. And when she moved, I moved to Ahwatukee and took it over. And it's now in probably 10 of our 18 locations. Yep. And we've got, 12 to 13 therapists that are certified, trained, or have taken a lot of coursework in the breast oncology field. And most people that get into specialties have a family member or a friend or a personal story. And I really don't have a personal story that got me into it. But working with just a couple patients, like every single woman had like this same like energy, same like just outlook on life that was awesome and really inspirational. And so I was like, I want to be surrounded by these really, really inspirational women. And that's kind of what got me into it.
You say you're a summary of the people you spend a
lot of time with. Agreed.
So why are these women so upbeat? Because they survived? They were looking death down
They're not initially.
No, not
They're
initially.
not initially because of the medical system. What do we have? 52% of the population is female. The percentage of women that get cancer is.
Oh gosh, I don't even know anymore.
It's high.
It's high.
Yeah, and so you have a large segment of the population that is going to encounter this disruption into their life, and it is a complete disruption. You get that diagnosis, you are hit, and now have to stop everything to go treat. And by the way, it usually happens to women in their 30s and 40s when they have kids at home and they're taking care of their family.
We just lost a friend, and what was so sad is she died at, I think she was 34. Her mother died of it at 34. And her mother's sister died of it at like 36.
So it's definitely hereditary.
Oh my
so
gosh.
Sad.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just, it's
It's
tough.
devastating, especially because I feel like when I first got into it, I felt like my average age of patients were around their like 40s and 50s, but I would say it's now 30s and 40s. Like women are definitely being diagnosed at younger ages.
Yeah, I mean, you would be psychologically prepared and ready for that at 70.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know when I'm 70, someone's going to tell me someday I have prostate cancer. I mean, I already know that now, 20 years before it happens.
Yeah.
But you're not thinking about that when you got two little rugrats running around the house.
And, if you look at the mom as being the center of a community, because mom does everything. Mom takes care of the kids, gets them to school, involved in other activities. If mom goes down, the heartbeat of your community goes down. So what LaRissa and her team does with taking care of communities is phenomenal to get them back to doing things that they like to do.
I'm just talking about it. You teared up just talking about it. I mean,
it's emotional.
Yeah. So, are these women all post mastectomy? Is that usually when you see them?
Post mastectomy, lumpectomy. It could be 5-7 years down the road, but we've generated ourselves in the community enough that we're kind of the go-to spot, especially in Ahwatukee, with surrounding physicians who are dealing with women that have been diagnosed. So oncologists, radiation oncologists, plastic
So they're
surgeons.
going to physical therapy because after the surgery stuff, they've lost muscles, they've lost tendons, ligaments.
I mean, the
they're
easiest
having
way
movement issues.
to explain it is that it's no different than any post-op orthopedic surgery. You're making an incision, so there's going to be scar tissue. Sometimes you're putting in a foreign object, just like a knee replacement or shoulder replacement. You're putting in an implant, and then you're stitching them back up, and you're saying, go return to function, and this person's not knowing, like, can I lift this? Should I be carrying my child? Should I be reaching up over my head? And so getting them into physical therapy right away can help them progress along there. The difference, though, between an orthopedic case is that a lot of these patients are also going either adjunct therapies, such as radiation and chemotherapy, so that's delaying their recovery even more. And they're having to battle the fatigue, the neuropathy, the tightness of the skin from the radiation.
Yeah, and they don't know where they can reach out. I mean, you hear a lot of grandpas, like after like getting an artificial hip, they'll say something. And, we've been told since we were little kids that no pain, no gain.
Right.
So just suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah, the person who created this vessel that we carry on, or that we utilize, put pain receptors in our body for a reason. In Western medicine, we like to cover them up with medications and things, but if we truly listen to them, the body will help us get better. And so that, again, as therapists, that's really what we do. We listen to what is hurting and then try and use something else to help that as well.
And there's this little silent epidemic going on out too. I mean, I know there's the rest of the world out there, but we only talk about Ahwatukee. We don't want to talk about Tempe and Chandler and Maricopa and all those other places. But a lot of people get into pain, and next thing you know, a really good man family man, worker, is now addicted to an opioid. And I've known, and then if their doctor stops giving them opioid, that man who's a deacon in the church is now finding street heroin because his doctor cut him off. You know, so
It's cheaper, by the way.
Is it?
Absolutely.
So talk about opioids. You know, when I got out of, you know, for the longest time, you had your 30,000s. 30,000 Americans died in car wrecks. 30,000 died in accidents, mostly at work and stuff. 30,000 died of an accident. Yeah, car wrecks, suicides, and accidents. 30,000 suicides, 30,000 car wrecks, 30,000 accidents, like falling off ladders and stuff. Mm-hmm. And now out of nowhere, we got a new 30,000, and it's opioid overdose.
Mm-hmm. That's a small number right now. That number is going to grow exponentially.
Yeah. So talk about that, because a lot of people treat pain with opioids.
So where did it start?
The doctor.
So we have a physician-induced epidemic.
Absolutely. But and now I'm 55. How old are you?
I'm 53.
Okay. But I got to put some historical perspective on. When we got out of school in '87, we were the bad guy because these people had cancer and we wouldn't give him pain med. And, you know, he's got cancer. He's an 80-year-old man. He's going to die anyway. You just did a root canal. She has a dry socket. So 30 years ago, the press was beating us up because we wouldn't be nice and give you a pain.
Well, rule number 1, don't listen to the press.
And now 30 years later, now the pendulum went way to the other side. Now they're just... so now the pendulum's coming back. But anyway, I didn't start
I don't see it swinging back yet. Because almost every orthopedic surgery that's being done today, you will get a prescription for a narcotic as just a post-operative diagnosis. So you'll have 10, 20, 25 prescription of that to get through your post-operative pain.
It's still the number one prescribed drug in America every year.
And we're talking about the reservoir at the bottom here, but they're still filling it back up at the spring. It has not stopped.
Hydrocodone has been the number one prescribed prescription in America every year for the last decade.
Why is that?
Because they give them after every 4 wisdom teeth, after every root canal, after every artificial joint, knee, hip, pain.
How many do they need?
Well, I mean, I'm just a dentist.
No,
I'm
just kidding.
I don't know what you need after a hip.
It's not monitored very closely, and you know you can do personality profile tests on these people to see who has a potential of more of an addictive personality. But again, that's a very easy thing to administer, but it's not being done.
I think the other thing to say about it is that we live in a society that we have everything at our fingertips. You know, we want to order something on Amazon, we can get it that day. We want fast food, we can get it within a few minutes. We want our pain to go away, we take a pain pill and it goes away in a few minutes. And weight loss, there's weight loss pills. So there's all these quick and easy things where people are looking for that easy way out versus, I don't want to go to physical therapy for 6 weeks, 3 days a week. Like, I'll just take my opiate, or I'll just take my pain pill and my knee pain will go away. It may not fix it, but it feels better.
So what is your number one client? You work in Ahwatukee? Or are you there?
Yeah, I work here in Ahwatukee.
So you're full-time in Ahwatukee.
Yes.
And you're at 16611 South 40th Street.
Correct.
Yes.
So if you're on Chandler Boulevard, 40th Street is where the Safeway's on one side, and what's on the other side? Is that Fry's? Safeway and Fry's. So you're headed south towards Pecos, and the light at the halfway mark, you turn left, it's Fry Road, is right there. What are you guys mostly seeing? I mean, what would be your top 10 types of clients?
Oh my gosh. So we're in a facility where we have the only hand therapist in Ahwatukee. So we see a lot of hand, wrists, and elbows. And then we have our hand therapist. Along with her, we have 8 other physical therapists. And we see your typical post-operative, whether it's rotator cuff, knee replacement, hip replacement, anything post-op, whiplash or neck pain, low back pain. We have specialties with vertigo. We have specialties in our breast.
Explain what vertigo is.
Basically, vertigo is an episode of being dizzy. To get really in depth, it's like there's crystals in your inner ear that become loose. And
what did Michael Jackson have? It would sound like that word. The skin.
No.
No.
What was that called? Vertigo.
Vertigo?
Yeah, vertigo. That was
So he had. So Michael Jackson had vertigo, a skin deal.
It would
But
be
this is
unrelated.
Right. But this is vertigo.
Yeah.
Well, the one thing doctors always do is they always use too many words of Latin and Greek.
Yeah.
And then my homies are listening and saying,
I love it.
Well, what the hell is vertigo? Yeah. But anyway, and
Vertigo is very common after dental procedures because you have these 3 canals in your ear, and when you tilt somebody into an extended neck position, those crystals can move, and they can. If you ever had anyone come up out of a chair and be very dizzy, and it's very common, they'll have neck discomfort a lot of times, and this is a very easy thing for us to diagnose and take care of.
By the way, on that vertigo, Michael Jackson, I
Yeah.
got to tell you my vertigo story. Me and the clinical dean of the dental school in Mesa, we actually did a missionary dental trip to Tanzania, and it was 300 orphans with vertigo, like Michael Jackson had.
Wow.
And they have to, when aid workers find them, they have to put them in these facilities because they're worth more than a rhino to the witch doctors. And when the witch doctors find them, they butcher them up and cut them up because a lot of their lotions and potions have this. So it was amazing. It was surrounded by 12-foot wall. It looked like one of these mini storage places. Razor wire on the edge, 24-hour guards 7 days a week because you're in Africa and that's one of the rarest concoction potions. So these kids could not be. The average medicine man is probably going to be 67 years old, 5'7", 145 pounds. So until that kid can beat up that guy, he can't leave.
Wow.
And they were all happy because it was so interesting because if you're the only guy in the town that has that, you might be self-conscious. But when you're in a school with 300 kids and y'all got it, they were the happiest. They were all giggling and laughing the whole time. They looked like they were having the time of their life. But anyway, sorry to interrupt. So you talked about post-operative, whiplash, lower back, vertigo, hand therapy.
All types of. We take care of a lot of the endurance athletes in the community.
The Ironman.
Lots of triathletes.
Ironman weekend warriors.
Runners, bikers that are putting on high repetitions, onto their bodies, and they need some TLC to work through their high episodes of training, and also just show them other training to keep them healthy. Take care of the sports athletes at the schools.
A lot of the local schools we have some good affiliations with.
I think we're living through a revolution in sports. I noticed that in my office for 30 years. Every time a man gets a knee or a hip replacement, he always sits there and says, looking back, I should have never played high school football. Sometimes a woman will say, I don't know, I was in the marathons for like 10 years and I just completely beat up my body. And now it's the concussion thing. There are retired NFL players living in Ahwatukee who won't let their little kids play football. And then some are crazy like soccer. They're bouncing it on their head, which is so bizarre. They're not allowed to use their hands, but they can use their head. And then in boxing, I'm going to wrap up and protect my hands and then punch you in the head.
Right.
It's like, how did the world value hands over heads? And so I want to follow that. What sports do you think are going to lead to the most physical therapy? And what would be the good sports? Like volleyball, they're smart enough to beat up their forearms.
Right.
I mean, I don't think many people
That's a fabulous question. And, you could say, baseball, geez, there's not a whole lot of contact. But I think, and what I've studied and what is being studied right now is the problems with overuse injuries. So you're playing baseball, and if you start to show some promise at age 8, 9, you are starting to play year-round that sport. And a young body is not designed to withstand that kind of stress. And Dr. Andrews, James Andrews, is studying this, and he's seeing that what he used to do surgeries on a 28 to 30-year-old professional, he's now doing on 14 to 16-year-olds. And it's because the business, if you will, of club sports and year-round playing
And psychotic parents.
Well,
They're psychotic.
The parents may be psychotic, but they're also, where's their information? And that's where we pride ourselves, and we're someone's resource for the community. We take phone calls all the time. We give our cell numbers out. People know, and they'll call us and say, what do you think? Or, and, what would be really interesting in the club sport phenomena is if instead of playing baseball year-round, if you are in a club and you're with your group and you really like playing with that group of kids, perfect. Just play 3 or 4 sports. Be competitive, but play football, play basketball, run track, do different things, and you'll develop a good competitive, balance as well. And the kid still gets there's still a huge benefit to playing sports. There's still a huge benefit to having competed and learn some of those trials that you learn in a team environment or under the stress of competition. Those are lifelong skills that I want my kids to have. I don't want that taken away, but at the same time, I don't think you can do one thing forever and not say it's not going to have a consequence.
Yeah, but that's just a typical American. I mean, you have a patient that they put their daughter in a beauty contest at 6 years old. Okay, cute, fun, pictures for the baby book. But now they're going to a beauty pageant every month, year round, for 5 years, and it's like, okay, Mom, you're
traveling
crazy.
all over.
You're crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a difference between, and like you're saying, okay, so you got good in football. Well, that doesn't mean you want to play football year round for 10 years. And it seems like it's like typical American. They either haven't bowled in 10 years, or they own their own bowling ball and they're in a league and bowl. And there's just no in between. You're either standing on the gas with both pedals or the brake with the other. There's no moderation.
Yeah.
But
the sad part about that though is that these kids that are being pushed early on are burning out much quicker.
Right.
So even before they're hitting full puberty at 12, 13, 14, they realize that they may not be that elite person. And so they'll stop completely. So now we've got this gluttony of gluttons that don't move at all because, well, I can't be great at it, so I'm not going to do anything. And that is worse for the health of the nation, health of a community than anything. We should be encouraging activity, encouraging these kids to stay physically active and competitive instead of seeing which Johnny can be the best.
Yeah, I always thought that the schools shouldn't be allowed to cut anybody from the team and just build up a JV. When I was in high school, the wrestling team had a varsity, a junior varsity, and then a C team. Because the priests and nuns said, that kid gets out of school at 3, his mom doesn't get off work till 5, and he wants to wrestle, as opposed to what? Send him home alone?
Yeah.
Too much time on his hand, unsupervised. Next thing you know, he'll have a girlfriend drinking beer, and so yeah, I don't believe that he should be cut. Also, it seems like there's 2 types of occupations. When we were little, everybody was farmers, manufacturing, industry, physical, and now it seems like about half are like that. But now the other half are cubicle jobs. And you're starting to see things we never heard of when we were little, like carpal
More like
tunnel.
30-70.
Like what?
It's more like 30-70.
30 physical, 70 sedentary?
Yep.
So what are the sedentary injuries that are treated by physical therapy that weren't household names in the 60s?
I mean,
Carpal tunnel would be one.
Right.
Yeah,
Lots of neck and shoulder pain.
Yeah, they'll still call it a shoulder strain. What's causing it? It could be caused by just a lack of hip mobility, and I'm getting a shoulder strain because I don't have the physical ability to move and let my shoulder do what it wants to do. Or maybe it doesn't get hurt at work, but I go home and I've got some yard work to do, and I have to reach up into areas that I haven't trained my body to do. So you are what you train. So if you sit and you practice being in a chair, you will eventually become a chair. You won't have that mobility to go out and do things like when we were young, we played and went all different directions and reached up and threw things and fell down. You lose that ability to do that and you'll do simple things. It's kind of like the back patient that comes in and says, "Yeah, I was sitting down and I just bent over, my back went out." Where to go? You know, I mean, it in a sarcastic kind of way. It's, you know, they're a product of their training, and it's unfortunate, but there are lots of things that you can do to help that.
You said sitting in a chair all day, you become a chair. I notice when you go into a lot of business in Ahwatukee, maybe 1 out of 25, she's sitting on a ball. Mm-hmm. And I saw my first one just a couple months ago where he had a stand-up desk. What do you think of these new trends? Do you recommend a ball over a chair?
All of the offices I've designed in the last 5 years have a stand-up desk for my staff. It's healthier.
Does they all have a chair?
They have
is it the one on TV goes up and down? Does yours go up and down?
No, but these are fixed height, but they have a bar stool they can sit on if they need to get off their feet for a short period of time. But they're also stand-up desks that just allow the person to stand, which is a healthier way to work.
Let's quote him there. So our front office now at Tukey, we're still sitting. So maybe he should come down now at Tukey and remodel.
And what do you you know, back to these repetitive tasks, you're sitting in a chair all day in a cubicle, but then you're laying in a bed 8 hours a night. There's a lot of mixed messages on beds. I mean, you're told you should get a Tempur-Pedic foam.
Yeah.
You're told you should, you know, and these beds aren't cheap.
Rest is rest.
But if you spend a third of your life in bed, how much does your bed have to do with your...
Rest is rest. Whatever allows you to sleep comfortably and allows you to get into deep sleep and REM sleep is what you should do. And there's a reason that there's a whole bunch of varieties out there, is because there's a whole bunch of different bodies. So find what works for you. But on the other aspect, if you're sitting a lot, then you need to counterbalance that with some movement, some mobility exercises, some just general physical activity.
Yeah, and you got to take care of yourself, because it's a very sad and helpless feeling when grandma falls down in her own home and she can't even get up. I mean, imagine laying on the floor for 3 days before your daughter finds you. I mean, you know.
Falls and slips are, you know, a leading cause of injury, death in the elderly, and you know, it's becoming more and more so into a younger age, because we sit on our power source. We sit on our butt, and if you're not standing and exercising your butt, you're going to lose your ability to balance, your proprioception that allows you that when you go to an extreme part of your motion, if you don't have the balance to return yourself to center, you tip over. And that's a very, you know, simple thing to treat, simple thing to educate people on, simple thing to that could help the community and help so many people that is not done. We like to wait till grandma hits the floor. You know, and then we're really good at taking care of the hip. But why don't we help grandma before she hits the floor?
You know, the only time I hear about lower back, because I only read dental journals, obviously, but they always talk about the 5 spasms: your head spasm, your brain spasms, you can call it a headache or a migraine; your heart spasms, you can call it whatever; your lower back spasms. The other one is irritable bowel. And the 5th is our area, TMD.
Yeah.
And so they link a lot of this to stress. So this human's all stressed out and their brain spasming, but they think it's because they ate gluten or chocolate or red wine. They're all grinding their teeth. Lower back, irritable bowel, heart. What
You're
you talking
missing
about?
one.
What's the other one?
Pelvic floor.
Pelvic floor.
There's a lot.
Explain the pelvic floor. The iliac crest, the jejunum?
Nope, pelvic floor. The muscles that hold all of our organs. But there's a huge link to chronic pelvic pain. And we're starting to hear about it more frequently over the last couple of years. And I think it's more because our generation coming up is more outgoing to speak about those things versus hiding them in. But there's a lot of links to carrying stress within your pelvic floor and having pelvic pain, chronic pelvic pain, which sometimes is referring to the low back, so differentiating between low back pain and pelvic floor pain.
Wow, I love my own podcast. In dentistry, I've done 1,000 podcasts, and my only claim to fame is I'm the only person who listened to all 1,000 of them. But I love doing them more than anyone else does listening to them because I learn so much.
Right?
I mean, I've never heard of the pelvic floor.
Yeah, we actually have.
Will you go through those 6 spasms? Does physical therapy apply to migraine, heart, lower back, irritable bowel, TMD, pelvic floor?
Yes.
Absolutely.
All of them?
Yes.
Wow.
Because
Go through that.
so let's go in the first one's headache, migraine. So that's associated sometimes with neck mobility, neck tension, but also just general movement in general. Some migraines can be triggered by vertigo and different inner ear things as well. So it's definitely something we can treat. What's the next one? Heart. Obviously, physical activity and getting people up and moving. That's gonna be kind of a secondary thing. But if we are getting people to be healthier in general, and a lot of therapists have a healthy activity background, but also a nutritional background to help them in that way.
Next, lower back.
The lower back. The lower back is probably it gets a lot of complaints and a lot of attention that aren't his fault. So we look at the back as the crossroads of the body. Force is coming up from a ground reaction force, up through the lower body, up through the hip, heading up to the shoulder, then down to the hand. Okay, and conversely, it's coming back the other way. And the low back's just in the way. And a lot of the problems with the low back are hidden somewhere else. And so a lot of people come into us with back spasms or degenerative disc disease or even herniated disc, and we say, oh, bad back, you got a herniated disc. And my question is always, why did that herniate on the left side and not the right? Why did that one herniate and not the other one? Why are we picking on the back and not looking elsewhere? And so our fellowship training is what allows us to look at the entire body at once and realize that the problem, more often than not with the low back, other than acute trauma, is somewhere else.
And that's honestly coming out of PT school. If I would have had a patient get on my schedule that said low back pain, I would have looked at their low back, felt their low back, worked on their low back. But going through our fellowship training, and we speak to kind of looking at the body three-dimensionally, I now look and say, all right, their thoracic spine in between their shoulder blades isn't moving, their hips aren't moving, and the poor back is stuck in the middle, and it's worn down and now has disc bulge, herniation, degenerative joint disease. And so addressing the areas above and below can kind of help create or alleviate the pain.
Take stress off of it.
So you're saying the lower back is the Poland of the earth?
I would, or the Netherlands. Either way you want to look at that. Either way, someone's going through them, beating the crap out of them.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Poland was the worst place you'd be located. Is in between Russia, Prussia, the Ottoman Empire, Germany. I mean, you go back 1,000. Some army was always coming through poor Poland.
Yes.
That's what you're saying the lower back is just...
Yep.
And it's not the only one. The knee is another one. The knee is caught between the foot and the hip. And the elbow is caught between the hand and the shoulder. So there are some distinct areas in the body that continually get caught between other areas, and it's really not their fault.
And the next one, or TMD, temporal mandibular disorder, patients call it TMJ, they name the disease, temporal mandibular joint. But it's kind of bizarre because when I straighten out my arm, my hand location is determined by my elbow. When I straighten out my leg, my foot's determined by my knee. But your teeth come together, and then your joint's left over. So if your joint wants to go here, but your teeth might go up, down, left, right, or whatever, it's the only joint that does that.
If we keep asking why did that joint get asymmetric? Why is one side in so much more spasm than another? And again, you can look at that, and you have to alleviate that discomfort, right? That person is very uncomfortable and having significant problems. But if we continually ask why, we'll continue to search for maybe a deeper biomechanical problem that may be somewhere else in the body.
So do you guys treat TMJ patients?
Yes.
We have several clinicians within the company that are certified or trained within it.
And I would
trained
not,
specifically for TMJ?
Yeah.
and I would not be one of them.
And I would not be one of them.
But you have one person or two? Or?
We have several.
Several.
We have one in Ahwatukee who actually took a course through a dental program called the Rockabottom course. I think it's called Rockabottom.
The what?
I think it's called Rockabottom. Rockabottom. But it's like a 5-day course for physical therapists that are it's put on by the dentist.
Could you email me her
Yeah.
information?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that course you take, I might, since I'm a selfish dentist, I might want to bring her back, just do a whole show. Just
Absolutely.
Jeff would be
Because
a great person to have.
Jeff would be a great one.
And,
his name, Jeff?
Jeff, yeah. And Jeff is also a professor down at the NAU campus, and he's a phenomenal resource.
Up in Flagstaff?
No,
NAU?
but they have a downtown campus as well for
NAU
physical
does?
therapy. Yeah, for physical therapy, they have 2 classes now. One up north and one down here.
I went to ASU. I had 4 sons. The good son also went to ASU, but the other 3 monsters went to NAU. Flag. I think the only thing they got a degree in was snow skiing. I'm pretty sure that was their major. And going to school.
I would do the same.
But an interesting thing about TMJ is that you dentists have to ask themselves what's the success rate of treating this?
Right.
So if you go to a dentist to get treated for TMJ and you're still miserable, well, yeah, I'd like, but selfishly as a dentist, I'd like to bring Jeff on.
Sure,
And
so having treated that, you realize that it involves multiple facets of things that you have to bring in to help that person out. You can make the most perfect appliance. That's one thing. Also doesn't unwind just by itself, but also, what other postural deformities, what other things have been leading to that, all have to be addressed as well.
So now, if my homies go to your website, it's Spooner PT. So spoon, like an eating spoon, or Spooner, and that is and that's so you took your last name Spooner and added PT.
It seemed like a good idea 27 years ago.
I like it, Spooner PT. And so what would my homies find on your website if they go to Spooner PT? Like, would they find that TMJ guy Jeff on here?
Yeah, it would have all the specialties, and then under the location, it would have Jeff's bio on there as well.
And it would, we're always available to contact to be able to answer people's questions, because we realize there's a ton of misinformation out there, and
so it says right here, you give a complimentary assessment.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So if anybody listening just wants to, because they all have something special.
Yeah.
But that doesn't cost money to come in and talk about that.
No. And the sad part about our industry is that 10 people wake up tomorrow with back pain, and they all go to a doctor. 1 in 10 is actually ever referred to a musculoskeletal expert to actually treat it. So there's 9 other people out there that are walking around that have not been referred, that are still suffering, of people that we can help.
So under programs, you have a list of a bunch of these programs. Talk about some of those programs.
So we have our ACL injury rehab program. So Spooner Physical Therapy is a sponsor for the Rattlers football team here in Arizona.
But stop right there, because that's what confused me. I mean, you just said, when we were talking about sports, you said they shouldn't do one sport year round. They should do football and basketball and baseball and everything. But I'm starting to really think, should you be playing football? I mean, I'm not going to let my grandson Danelle play football. I read one study that 10% of knee replacements on 65-year-old, 10% of them were from high school football. I mean,
Why?
because they got tackled on their knee.
Well, maybe they got tackled on their knee, but treatment may not have been all that great back then either.
But you'd still recommend you would.
I think it all depends.
Do you have children?
I've got 4 boys in high school. I've got boys playing football.
So you and I each have 4 boys.
Yeah.
There's a special place in heaven for us.
He has 2 sets of twin boys.
Yeah, especially
2 twin boys?
2 sets of twins.
Oh my God! Identical?
No.
Wow.
But I think there's a special place in heaven for my wife. I don't know about
how many months
me.
apart were the 2 twins?
26 months.
Okay, well that's good. I had 4 boys in 60 months. That was some not very good planning, but anyway.
But my boys play, and my one of my older sons had a non-contact significant knee injury his freshman year. He was going through a growth phase, and the knee just popped out.
So
and he he went through the rehab process. It was, it was a learning curve for him. He had a lot of pain, significant injury, and he came back. He showed perseverance in coming back, and he's not the star of the team, but he comes back and he's with his friends. He's out on the team, and he just dyed his hair bright yellow, kind of like your shirt, because they're in the playoffs. And
what high school is that?
Chaparral.
Chaparral is in the high school playoffs right now.
Yeah.
So it's already playoff season for high school.
Yep, they had the first game on Friday.
Wow.
But I would encourage. I mean, I had multiple ankle injuries playing basketball in high school. Would I have not had an injury? My most significant injury of my ankles happened when I was older, playing basketball actually with a bunch of physicians. So I don't think it's that youth injury that leads to chronicity. What leads to chronicity is poor treatment in between.
You know how I avoided all injuries in high school football at Bishop Carroll?
What? Did play?
Well, no, I was on the team, but I just washed the towels. I never, and they all liked you because you threw them a fresh, warm towel out of the dryer.
There you go.
You were their favorite guy.
I know.
Water when they
well,
needed
the water
it.
boy is the favorite guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
The towel guy is number 2, though.
Yeah.
But
What are the other ones?
if you had children,
I have not.
but if you did have children, would you let them play football?
I would. I mean, it's no different than allowing your kids to go drive. I mean, how many car accidents
that's-
are throughout the day?
Where were you born and raised?
Nebraska, in a small little town.
I
farm.
went to Creighton, and football is a religion in Nebraska.
It is.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's the church. It's
Yeah.
the number 1 church
The
in
Church of
Nebraska.
It
Husker.
is. Yeah.
Oh my God,
That is
But
true.
anyway,
We
but-
played Husker Red.
Yeah, so that when we talk about our ACL prevention, it's not just football injuries. One of the leading causes of ACL injuries is actually female athletes, and a lot of them are non-contact injuries. So there are strengthening and conditioning programs for female athletes, for getting middle-aged people ready to go skiing. Getting their bodies ready training it to do what they want to do. And these are all programs that we have went through the research, and we've got programs to help people play at their optimal level. And some of the other ones.
Alter G treadmill. So at 3 of
Alter
our
G,
treadmill.
and the G's for gravity.
Yes.
And it's an anti-gravity treadmill, which is interesting. So I can take you and say you've got a ding in your cartilage on your knee, and it's kind of painful for you to get a lot of activity. Well, in the anti-gravity treadmill, you can come in and we can take a 100th of your body weight off at a time. So I could have you at 85% or 82% of your body weight, and by doing that, I can take it down to probably where that wouldn't hurt. And if that doesn't hurt, and I can increase your activity level, then I can help you, be more active, possibly become more fit. And when someone's recovering from an injury or doing a high episode of endurance training, that's
But that
very
technology
helpful.
is almost extinct, though.
Oh, no.
Because as soon as Elon Musk can fly you to the moon, then you could just
Well,
walk around at 40%.
Right.
That's
right?
possible, but on the affordability scale, I think we'll be okay for just a bit.
We'll send Elon Musk the memo.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have aquatic therapy, so one of our locations does have a small swim pool.
Yep.
Up in our Scottsdale clinic. We talked about breast cancer, about hand therapy. We did not talk about.
But you didn't talk about what causes the hand.
Yeah.
What did they do to their hand? Was it writing in a pen?
It's
carpal tunnel.
everything
The
from
mouse.
You talked about that. Those 30% of physically active people. Well, they may be doing something with machine, and all of a sudden, instead of the material getting in the machine, their hands are in the machine, and they get crushed, they get degloved, they get burned. There's no shortage of
mostly
waste.
occupational.
No. I mean,
I got to tell you about my hand. One of my jobs for the summer in college was at Tukeetown Manufacturing in Wichita, Kansas, that made the copper handle for the Coleman hot water heater plant in Wichita, Kansas. Coleman, very big in Wichita.
Yeah.
And above every one of the saw machines, they had a jar of of a finger lacerated, and they were all, it was all fake and pretend. But every machine
Kind of a reminder.
that could cut your finger or hand off, and this one big machine that I'd have to go to like twice a day had an entire
Arm.
hand with ligaments and blood vessels sitting in this pretty good sized jar. And because they weren't kidding around, they're like, dude, you take your eye off the ball,
Yeah.
and you shove a copper deal through that blade,
Zip.
it's gone.
Yeah.
And it worked. It always
Yeah.
made me think, holy shit, I'm like
Wake up.
17. I don't want to lose my hand.
Well,
But there's-
and you think of driving nowadays, okay? And you get into a rear end collision or a head on collision, that airbag goes off, and we see wrist fractures in that from the airbag. Now it keeps the noggin clean, and it's much easier to repair that wrist fracture, or someone's doing something with their hand when that airbag goes off. That guy's getting snapped.
And rest in peace, that plant is in Mesa.
Yep.
And about every 10 years, one of those things explodes and takes
Unfortunately.
5 souls with it.
It does, but I think it saved
yeah.
thousands more.
But
It's incredible.
that is a controlled explosion, an airbag.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Have you had
By
one
the
go
way,
off?
sorry to interrupt, but I'm afraid
fine.
to forget. But I get this question a lot.
Yeah.
It's amazing what you talk about, chair side and all. But a lot of people say, 5 years ago, sometimes 10 years ago, I broke my hand, I broke my wrist. They had to put a plate in there, but it doesn't ever really feel totally right anymore. And they're always asking me. They say, "You think I should go back and take that rod out?" And do you ever get that question?
Oh, we get it all the time.
All the time.
How do you analyze they got a rod, a pin, something, and they still playing the piano or doing
Yeah.
their job? It's still not quite right. How do you evaluate if that rod should be
That
taken
totally
out?
depends on the situation,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
major communication with that physician if their physician's still
Yeah.
in the area.
Yeah, two things. Number one, we don't do orthopedic surgery. He's the guy that put it in there and is at risk for that
But a
material.
lot of them don't want to go back to that guy,
And that's fine, and that's
Right.
and that's where we our relationship with him to understand what's in there. Maybe even go over the X-rays with him and stuff because we're seeing that person a lot. The second part is they did have an injury, so just like you would wish you could be, younger and healthier like I do. I mean, I'd love to be 30 again and feel great. Well, you can't go back to pre-injury. You can only take from where you are today and try and make that better. And sad to say, sometimes injuries leave limitations. Now, I still think there's ways to optimize that, but instead of focusing on a very, very small area that maybe is a little uncomfortable, is there something else we can do to alleviate that and use the rest of you to accommodate for whatever you want to do where that's having a problem?
Yeah, for the record, I do not want to go back to age 30.
You sure? You're positive?
God dang.
You don't want to go through the grind
I've
again?
never been happier at 55. Slowing down. My babies are all out of college. I'm a grandpa.
Right.
I'd rather be a grandpa than have someone in diapers. Trust me.
Yeah, I remember that blurry period.
Yeah. But anyway, continue your list.
Yeah, our women's health program, our pelvic floor program that we've talked about. So we have a men and women's pelvic floor program with several clinicians within our company that specialize in the pelvic floor.
Okay, I would assume that 99% of everyone listening to just heard of pelvic floor for the first time.
And they have no idea that physical therapy can treat it.
You're gonna need to explain what's the diagnosis.
How would my homie in Ahwatukee listen to you right now?
Yeah.
Know
So from the
pelvic
female
floor?
side of things, anything postnatal. So if someone's experiencing pelvic pain,
Talk about the disruption of
pain
of childbirth.
So first, I don't need to get into details. We all know what happens when you have a child. But there's damage to
Yeah,
those muscles.
Most males don't.
You lose all your money.
Yeah.
No free time. So when you're broke and have no extra time,
Right,
it's
and
your
you're
pelvic
tired.
floor.
Your poor wife has
Yeah.
to worry about her pelvic floor peeing herself and having pain.
Okay, but pelvic floor. I mean, they're thinking you talking about your hips.
No, I am talking
hip
about
bones,
your vagina.
inside the pelvis.
inside the pelvis.
Yes.
Yeah, it is basically, if you think of the rotator cuff as the top of your shoulder, this is the bottom of your core.
Right.
Because if you don't have a pelvic floor, there's a hole down there and it'll just all fall out.
Okay.
I mean, there's 3 phases for it. So it's sphincteric. It controls your bowel and bladder. So if you lose control of bowel and bladder, that can happen after childbirth. It has your sexual drive. So if you're having pain with intercourse. And then the support system for all your organs. And if it can't support your organs, there's only one way out. So there's 3 main functions. And a physical therapist who's trained in the pelvic floor can treat all of those. And it's really no different than going to your OBGYN. And that's for kind of the female side of things.
Okay, that's female. And what percent of pelvic floor patients are girls versus boys?
I would say 90% are female, only because from a male standpoint, there's an ego that goes along with it, or the embarrassment, because there's really not... Honestly, I don't know any men that treat physical therapy pelvic floor in the state of Arizona, let alone Phoenix.
Just solely for that. But
They're-
it is extremely common after,
Prostate.
as you meant, prostate cancer. You lose a lot of times. You lose control if you've had a surgical intervention.
I got to tell you my prostate cancer story, but the one thing comes from dentistry, so I'm sure it applies to you, is 30 years ago we always wondered why women are the only ones that had TMJ, and so everybody went chasing estrogen, progestin, had to be a girl thing, only for them to find out decades later through epidemiology that the boys and girls had it equally. But women raise their hand and get help.
Absolutely.
And the men don't ask for directions and they don't get help.
They don't read instructions.
My
Very
emergency
true.
room physician friends say it blows my... Women will come into the emergency room because they're not quite sure about... They're just not quite sure about something minor.
Right.
Then the man comes in passed out because he's had black diarrhea runs for a year and a half. And it's like, well, how do you have black diarrhea for a year and a half and then pass out at Safeway and end up in the emergency room? Did you ask anyone why you have black diarrhea? And he's a man.
Social sigma.
And the man only lives on average to 74, and women are almost at 80 in America. It's a 5-year bonus for more than one reason, but one of the reasons is women raise their hand and say, why does my pelvic floor hurt? Where the men just say, no pain,
Deal
no
with
gain.
it. Gonna deal
Suck
with
it
it.
up, buttercup.
Yep. Not gonna drink and talk about it over a beer with my buddies.
Yeah, I see it all the time. They just say, well, why don't you just put on your big boy pants and don't worry about it?
Yep.
So then they just die.
Yeah. How many people
Do
do
you
you
think
know
we
that? Go ahead.
Do you think we should switch to our gender? There are surgeries now where we could become women.
It's a whole nother subject.
Yeah,
then we can raise our hand
there is no way that you could get a male to there's a very, very small percentage of males that are tough enough to be women.
Yeah. So I got to tell you my prostate story. Doctors, the anesthesia risk are highest in humans under 13 and over 65. But when you get over 75, 85, 95, it goes off the charts. So people don't want to do a quadruple bypass on a 95-year-old grandpa. They just the odds of him dying on the table might be 1 in 10. So there's this man that we know here in Tukeetown, and he was at 90 and he had prostate cancer, and no one would do the surgery. And he wants to live to be 100, but no one would do the surgery. So he went round and round and round. He finally found a doctor, and guess what? This doctor is the only one doing just common sense. He says, well, you lay down on the table. They do these prostate surgeries, and a lot of times they don't coagulate. They bleed to death right on the table. So what did he do?
Set 'em up.
He made a bed where you clamp in your ankles, turned them upside down. So now the surgeon's standing up, looking straight ahead instead of bending over, looking down. Most all the blood is pulled below the torso, arms. You know how your fingers swell when you're like that. And did the surgery, and left him in that position until he had primary closure and clotting, and then slowly reversed him and with his legs elevated. But it's just like something so keep it simple, stupid.
Yep.
Just because every surgery is done in a bed, which is how dentistry got separated. The first dental school in the world was University of Baltimore. It was 1840. Because when they were building the medical school, the dentists wanted a chair and the doctors wanted a bed. And since one had to sit up and one had to lay down, that was the division of dentists and physicians at the University of Baltimore.
I did not know that.
That's fascinating.
and the whole
Otherwise, they
world-
were going through the same school.
Yeah, because if you're a dermatologist, if you were an ear, nose, and throat, an eye doctor, every other
You all
doctor
go through.
And so the first 6 years were the same, but the dentist got to the deal. They needed a chair. So a chair over a bed is what separated dermatologists from dentists. And that's why people would say to me, well, dentist, that's not a real doctor. I said, I'm pretty sure Dr. Pepper's not a real doctor. I'm pretty sure Dr. Seuss isn't either, or Dr. Dre, but I'm not a real doctor because we needed a chair and everybody else needed a bed, and now those beds are going to start hanging you upside down if you're...
so they're coming over to your side of thinking then.
Well, we haven't hung them upside down yet, but that might be next. But I thought that was very profound.
Relieve some of that TMJ stuff.
Yeah. I'm really excited about meeting your TMJ.
Yeah. We'll send him your way.
Don't forget to email me his name and tell me where to train. That'd be interesting. So continue on your list.
Talk about our Parkinson's program. So we have several therapists in our company that specialize in treating. Are you looking for a pen?
No, I lost my phone.
Oh, I have it.
I'm sorry.
I'm reading off of it.
Oh my God. That is, I think my mom did drop me. Mom, did you drop me on my head? Oh, by the way, Mom did call, Ryan. Remind me to tell you about Mom after. No. Anyway, continue.
Our Parkinson's program. So we have several therapists that specialize in treating individuals with Parkinson's.
So that's still a controversy to this day. Some people think Muhammad Ali, who just passed away here recently and was a larger-than-life legend, some people said he had Parkinson's and it would have come regardless if he was a boxer. Other people say, no, that was Parkinson's-like disease from getting punched in the head so many times. I mean, he came back to get his title like 3 times, and he was older. He's kind of... Do you think... Muhammad Ali would have had Parkinson's regardless if he was a heavyweight boxer of the world?
It's kind of like asking somebody after their car accident, do you think they would have back pain? And at that point, who cares? I really don't care if I have someone in front of me that needs my assistance. I'm going to take care of them regardless of what that looks like. There's one of the things that we learned in school was, here's this diagnosis, and here's this diagnosis, and here's this diagnosis. And what's happened in my 31 years of practice is that all of those diagnoses are now getting put onto a spectrum. They're getting put onto a sliding scale. And we can look at autism. We can look at a lot of different things that have a varying degree of things. Autoimmune diseases are another one. And there's a ton of different things like that if you're at this point in the scale or this point in the scale, does it really matter if you have an intervention that helps? I don't get too caught up on the diagnosis as I'm a treating clinician.
But what could a physical therapist do for someone with Parkinson's?
It's a movement disorder. Obviously, it has a etiology in the central nervous system. But they're physically affected, and so there's a lot of things that we can physically do to keep them safer, keep them at home longer, keep them operating at a higher level function. I've had pilots that have had Parkinson's in their 30s. He doesn't want his union to find out just then. Okay, so there's people you treat that you realize you don't want to carry on their life.
I think one of the you mentioned another one that people are debilitated by in limiting their motion is arthritis.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I thought one of the most interesting things that changed from when I was in school. When I was in school, they taught us about type 1 juvenile diabetes. They taught us about celiac sprue, multiple sclerosis, thyroid disorder, rheumatoid arthritis. Mm-hmm. Now they realize those autoimmune diseases are all clusters in family trees. Mm-hmm. So if you have a family where your brother's an insulin-dependent diabetic, your nephew's celiac sprue, your aunt had MS, and your mom's taking thyroid medication, rheumatoid arthritis. But it seems like in all reality, the most common thing I see when people are limited moving around, they say it's arthritis, and they're living off Motrin and ibuprofen and Aleve. Does physical therapy treat?
It's fabulous question, actually, because what is arthritis by definition? Arthro, meaning joint, itis meaning inflammation in a joint.
I did not know that. I learned something else on my own show. By the way, I'm the only one who's watched all these shows. So itis is inflammation, but arthro is joint?
Yeah, tendinitis, pancreatitis. It's an inflammatory process. So you've got a process going on in a joint. How is it normally diagnosed? Diagnosed via X-ray. Well, it's also known that the body degenerates a little bit over time because this thing called gravity is continually affecting us, and we're using it. So there is not such a joints in their sixth and seventh decade show wear and tear. They've had problems. So someone says it's arthritis, but I've also got people with arthritis, people with degenerative disc disease that have multiple levels that you could look at an MRI and say, wow, that's horrible, that compete nationally playing tennis. The arthritis isn't a limiting factor, okay, as much as people say that, and a lot of times it's not even the pain generator.
Okay, so there's a couple of Ahwatukees. When I got here 30 years ago, Ahwatukee, 48th Street stopped at Ray Road. It was cotton fields.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And now everybody down in the foothills calls this Old Ahwatukee, which I find offensive, being just a young 55-year-old spring chicken. But within 48th and LA, at that 2-mile radius, there's a ton of 65 to 105. Mm-hmm. So what would you say to grandma or grandpa who's basically has to eat Motrin, ibuprofen, Aleve every day, and because you give a free consultation, free screening. But what would you say to her? Because what I get worried about is when they're telling you chair-side, it's like your liver and kidney can't take that much. They go, well, it's that or I can't get around. It's like, man, I mean, there's a lot of people. I mean, we were talking about opioids. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of people eating way too much acetaminophen, ibuprofen, and they think because it's over the counter, it's safe. Lots of people tear up their kidneys and livers eating these over-the-counter.
I think
NSAIDs.
when they have that pain in the joint, it's like your check engine light coming on your car. You can either take it into the car dealership at that point and get it fixed, or you can keep trying to fill it with oil or check the gas tank, or you can try fixing little things, but that light still stays on telling you there's something wrong. So coming in for a free screening, have a physical therapist or a movement specialist take a look and figure out, like, why is that knee bothering them? Why is their hip bothering them? Why is that back? And it goes back to kind of our talk about the low back pain. Like, sometimes that degeneration in that joint's not it's not happening because of that joint. It's something up and above it or below it. And so really getting a full assessment and then making sure that person's doing the right exercises or doing the right movement patterns to decrease the stress on that joint.
So our tagline's health in motion. So what we're going to do with that person is use whatever else we can in their body, but ultimately get them moving. Okay, we like to focus on a bad knee, but 95% of you is actually working pretty good. Let's use that other 95%, keep that active, and have that help you.
So same question, but instead of grandma eating Motrin, ibuprofen, Aleve, I cannot, if I had $1 for every time I heard grandpa say, if I start feeling bad, I just take a belt of whiskey. And so what would you say to grandpa who treats his arthritis with I don't even know what a belt of whiskey is. I always hear this term from 70, 80, 90, 100-year-olds.
I think that's the same thing as 2 or 3 fingers.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard that one either.
Well, that's...
Yeah, how deep?
Yeah, how deep?
How deep?
I don't know the origin of that, but that might be my best.
So what would you say to grandpa who has to take a belt of whiskey?
It's a great question. Do you like hitting your thumb with a hammer? Because if he's an active guy, he might understand that. And the only way that thumb's ever going to feel better is if you get the thumb away from the hammer. But if you keep hitting it with a hammer, it's going to keep hurting. Yeah, and I just can't say it enough. If you're watching this and you're young, I just can't tell you enough how men don't seek help. And so, you got that old school grandpa, and you're a young, millennial.
talk to Grandpa. Talk to Grandma, because a lot of grandpas also were not allowed to complain. But she sees them hobbling around. You should talk to your grandma and say, has Grandma had black diarrhea for a year? Does he have to drink whiskey to get to be able to loosen up his hip in the morning? Society needs to do more about trying to get men to raise their hands, because at the end of the day, you're going to die at 74. And Grandma's going to damn near make 80. In fact, she's close right now. She's at like 79 and 8 months.
I think it's higher than that.
The last one I saw, Centers for Disease Control, but it might have been but anyway, last thing I saw, women were at like 79 and 8 months, and men were at 74, going down.
Jeez.
And you know why it's drifting down? It's a very complicated deal. It's part of this opioid addiction. Because there's something going on that people aren't really talking about, but when you look at all the great apes, Homo sapien, gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, gibbons, bonobos. Bonobos is a female society, like blue whales. The half-size mama swims down the middle, and the men twice their size take orders from outside. But with great apes, only one of them is a female-dominant society. The other 6 are male-dominant. It used to be our whole time that the man went out and caught the deer and farmed and had the good manufacturing job, and he felt all manly, and his wife had a lower paid retail job, desk job, whatever. But those manufacturing jobs are gone, and now his wife is more likely to have college and education. So now the wife's making more money than the man, and a lot of this opioid addiction has to do with a man whose wife is making more money, then he loses his job. He doesn't feel very manly. He starts getting depressed. And then when he gets depressed, he's not going to raise his hand and say, I'm sad and depressed and I'm on opioids. And so the opioid, the suicide rate, the loss of manufacturing jobs, average life expectancy for males has been drifting downwards. So women's are going up and men are going down. Women raise their hand and ask for help. And if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling blue, a woman will tell someone. A man won't. And women. So if you're a woman, you need to help your father raise his hand. And if grandma can't get him to raise his hand, you're his daughter. You're his son. And men need to be more bonobos. And yeah.
And I can't disagree with that at all. It's something that we've seen in society time and time again, and especially with the mom being the primary consumer of healthcare, and we'd be very wealthy if we, every time one of the moms said, "God, if I could only get my husband in here."
Yeah,
and you hear that all day. Long.
In a dental office, women and children are 80% of all the cleanings and appointments. The men come in every 5 years. My God, we went 15 minutes overtime. We're at an hour and 15. This was so fun.
It was good
talking to you. This was so informative. Don't forget to send me Jeff's email.
Yep, I will do that.
And if there's someone you want me to podcast, email me howard@tukeetown.com. Or my son Ryan sitting behind the camera. I don't know why he sits behind the camera, because I have a face for radio and Ryan has a face for TV. And so we're sitting on the wrong side of this damn camera. But you can email my son Ryan at tukeetown.com or email me, howard@tukeetown.com. Your website is spoonerpt.com. And the first 100 people that log on get a free trip to Disney World, all expenses paid. So be sure, and can we give me your phone number?
Our clinic number is 480-706-1199.
And do you use email?
Yes. And you can email me at l.shaps, SHAPS, @spoonerpt.com.
Well, it was an honor to have the founder of Spooner Physical Therapy
Thank
with
you very
18
much.
locations on the show. And you're the first doctor of physical therapy that I've ever met, LaRissa Shaps. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Doctor is a Latin word meaning teacher, and you really showed up as a doctor teacher today on the show. You taught me.
You learned about the pelvic floor.
I never heard about the pelvic floor. As soon as you leave, I'm going to go to the bathroom and try to find it. Thanks a lot for coming on the show.
You bet. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.